Good morning, welcome. We're very excited to have you all here for the American Zoroastrian Society's first talk, and we're honored to have Dr. Ann Khademian with us. I wanted to just speak a few words and introduce the organization since I know we are new. The American Zoroastrian Society is a nonprofit organization with the mission of helping to educate anyone interested in Zoroastrianism and providing an entirely inclusive worldwide community with equal membership opportunities for all. So some of our core values, I just want to share a few moments, please. Zarathustra's thought-provoking message, per the Gathas, is a living spiritual philosophy for self-realization and realization of the divine. The Gathas are explicit that this universal message is a way of life that is meant for all people everywhere. The universality of this message is the core value of AZS. As more individuals discover Zarathustra's teachings, the need for a welcoming community that provides primary education and fosters acceptance has become increasingly evident. AZS also believes strongly in the core ideals of freedom, pluralism, and human rights. We are mainly a virtual community with our initial concentration in North America, and we are accepting of anyone around the globe who would like to join or attend our programs. Additionally, as Zoroastrians strive to work with all good people to improve our existence by aligning ourselves with Asha, truth and righteousness, AZS is first and foremost a cooperative organization. We plan to join the Federation of Zoroastrian Associations of North America, FAZANA, and collaborate with any Zoroastrian organizations worldwide and any communities to make Zarathustra's message accessible to all who seek it. We're very excited to kick off this journey with you all today, and I'd like to hand it off to my dear friend and colleague, Arman Ariani.
Thank you, Navi John. It is indeed an honor to have as our first speaker for the American Zoroastrian Society to have Dr. Ann Khademian here with us. Looking at the audience, she really doesn't need an introduction. However, many of us may not be aware that even her professional life, she's also lived a very Zoroastrian professional life. Anne was born in Illinois and she grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But she's lived in St. Louis, Madison, Detroit, Philadelphia, and now she lives right outside of DC in Maryland. As most of you know, she's been married to Zarir for 40 years, who's a neurologist at a children's hospital in DC. The two daughters, beautiful names, Gordia and Yasna. Dr. Ann Khademian is a Zoroastrian by choice and served as the president of ZAMWI Board of Trustees from 2017 to 2021, and as an Avesta Class teacher and coordinator for many years before she was elected to the board. She is the executive director of the universities at Shady Grove, an innovative campus in the University System of Maryland, supporting pathways for all students to accessible and affordable higher education and high-demand career opportunities. Prior to joining the university system in Maryland, Ann served as the director of Virginia Tech School of Public and International Affairs. As a fellow with Virginia Tech Office of the President, responsible for advancing strategic initiatives. Her research and published work focuses on the practice of inclusive management, understanding, and managing organizational culture and organizational change. Ann is the chair of the board of directors for Montgomery County, Maryland's Chamber of Commerce, and a member of the board of the county's Economic Development Corporation. She's a fellow with the National Academy of Public Administration and was inducted to the Michigan State University Athletic Hall of Fame for cross country in 2006, and now a Hall of Famer with the American Zoroastrian Society. Please welcome Dr. Ann Khademian.
Thank you so much, Arman, and thank you, Artemis and Navid, everyone who invited me to this. It really is such an honor to be asked, and I feel very humbled that you thought of me. So thank you so much. Today I'm going to talk about diversity in thinking and ideas, and what it means for our culture, our Zoroastrian culture in modern America today. And I'm going to try to pull together some threads. I'm going to try to pull together some threads of my own personal journey as a Zoroastrian, some threads from my beautiful community that I'm part of, the Zoroastrian Association of Metropolitan Washington Incorporated, the community that welcomed my husband and I and my daughters with open arms when we came to Washington, D.C. And I'm going to try to pull on some of my research around culture. And so it's not going to be an academic talk. It's not going to be a heavy research-based talk, but I want to raise some ideas and get us thinking about what does it mean to have a vibrant culture that is dynamic and resilient and inclusive of broader ideas and broader possibilities as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and please, if you have a question, I guess we have a method for addressing questions and things. So I'll plug along, and you all let me know when to address questions. All right, let's see.
We will have a 15 to 20 minutes, depending on our time Q&A at the end. Thank you, Anne.
Great. So if I'm looking up, it's because my screen is up in front of me. So apologies for not being maybe looking right into the camera. Everyone can see my screen with a beautiful goliath on the screen. This is
Yes.
This is a picture from our backyard. We have a large goliath bush in our backyard. And I'll just start off, this January has been really cold in cold for Maryland. And I'm out there the other morning. It's really, it's about 0 degrees with the wind chill. And I'm, it's 5:01 in the morning, the time I always get up, and I'm out there with our dog, Lulu. And I'm kind of hunkered down and thinking like, oh God, it's really cold. Let's get back inside. And all of a sudden, this stiff wind blows through the yard, and it shakes all the trees, and the snow kind of falls from the trees. And this incredible smell comes across, the driveway, and it's our goliath bush, and it's this incredible fragrance. If you haven't smelled a goliath flower before, it means ice flower. Gol is flower, yak is ice. It blooms in the wintertime. And you can see it has snow on the on the petals. And this fragrance is just unbelievable. And there's nothing like this fragrance that I can imagine. No one's ever captured it in a perfume, but it's powerful, it's beautiful, it's soothing. And I just thought, let's start this talk with this idea of this beautiful flower. It's simple, it's small, it has kind of fading yellow leaves, it has a powerful heart red center, and it just persistently blooms in the harshest conditions. And it's very resilient. It manages to survive different climates, different locations, different weather conditions. And so I thought that kind of resilience would be a good place for us to start our journey, our conversation today. So years ago, when I was a professor, before I was an administrator, I wrote a lot. I wrote about culture. I wrote about inclusive management. I wrote about how people work together and collaborate together. It's one thing, I will say it's one thing to write about. It's another thing to try to make it happen. But I've been very intrigued about how people work together, the cultures that bring people together, that shape the work that we do, and how we influence our culture as well. And one of my first books on this topic was Working with Culture. But cultures are fascinating. It's such an interesting concept and such an interesting phenomenon. Cultures are constantly emerging. They're not static. Cultures are something that we continuously enact. And so you think, well, why do we have a culture? Why do cultures begin in the first place? And it starts with, why do we even come together? Why do we come together as 2 people, 3 people, groups, organizations, communities, countries, right? There's lots of reasons, but fundamentally we come together to survive, to reduce uncertainty in our lives, you know, to build things, and ultimately to thrive as well. So we come together with purpose. But when we come together, we come with ideas, we come with needs, and we have to eat. We have to, you know, enjoy ourselves. We have to have protection from the conditions. And we have reactions to wherever we happen to be and to the people we're with, right? We react to our surroundings. Maybe they're harsh surroundings. Maybe they're warm and lovely surroundings. Maybe we're able to grow food. Maybe we're not. Maybe we have to hunt, right? There's all kinds of things that we have to react to in that context as well. And we figure out how to survive with those ideas and those needs and that context. We figure out how to survive, and we start to practice those rules of thumb, those solutions, if you will, over and over again. And eventually those things become not even conscious, right? They become rituals and rules of thumb. The way we know our surroundings, the way we know the world around us, the way we know each other. And it just becomes part of who we are, part of our community and our culture and how we work together and how we think together. And sometimes those practices, those ways of knowing our world, sometimes they're very intentional, right? We've been very purposeful about how we've created things and brought ourselves together and how we practice things. And sometimes they're very unintentional, right? Things just emerge because we've been trying to survive under very difficult circumstances, or right. So sometimes, you know, we're trying to differentiate ourselves from others, or maybe fear is involved, right? So our practices emerge for intentional and unintentional reasons. But I believe that culture is at least understandable. We can understand why we are the way we are. We can understand why we work together the way that we do. And I'm speaking about cultures in a very generic sense, right? There's cultures in families, there's cultures in groups of people, there's cultures that emerge in organizations, in communities, right? But it all starts with this idea of coming together for a purpose and how we navigate to try to achieve that purpose, whatever that purpose may be. But cultures are not permanent solutions. Cultures, as I said earlier, we constantly reenact our practices, right? We're constantly taking steps to reenact. We practice rituals, we practice routines, we react to each other, we judge. Like it's a constant action that we're engaged in to keep our culture alive. And at some point, there's a friction between the culture, the rules of thumb, the way we behave, the things we do, and our goals, right? Or our ideals, our aspirations. I loved the way Navid began this program, stating why the American Zoroastrian Society has come together and what its core value is. That's it, right? That's what's bringing you together. That's your purpose, right? And so how this evolves, like we're starting that practice today on this call, all of us, what we're doing, how we're reacting. This is the one part of the beginning of what will eventually become a culture of the American Zoroastrian Society and all of the groups that it engages with as well. So cultures are fluid. They may seem stagnant. They may seem permanent, but they're constantly being reenacted. And at some point, those cultures clash with our context and with our ability to achieve our goals. And so the question is, how do we change? Or better yet, how do we adapt? How can our cultures adapt so that we can continue to pursue our goals, continue to pursue our values, continue to pursue why we came together in the first place, but do it in changing contexts, in changing circumstances, right? It's a continuous dynamic process. As we face change, how do we adapt? What does that look like? So I want to start with my own personal journey. So I put that out there about culture and things. Let's kind of hold that out there. And I want to talk a little about my own personal journey. Forgive me for being a little bit inward looking, but I shared with Artemis that I would share some of my own journey as well. So you know, my husband and I were married back in 1985. And when we came together very quickly, I will say. It was kind of love at first sight, I will say. And in fact, I suggested to my husband that we get married and get on with things because I thought we were really good together. And he agreed. And we've been together 40 years now. But, we got married quickly and we didn't really have a lot of conversations about, well, I was born in a Lutheran church and my husband was born in a Muslim family. And, if we had children, how would we raise our children? What would that look like? And so once we were together, we started a journey of exploring our faith. And Zarir had been always interested in Zoroastrianism. He had read a lot as a young person and been very interested. And even his mom had found books and suggested things for him to read. And so I started reading as well. And we reached out to the Council of Iranian Mobids, and they sent us recordings and they sent us books, and we started reading. And then we got connected with Mr. Khosrow Mobid, God rest his soul, from Chicago, and his wife Parveen. And so he started connecting with us and talking with us. And then at one point we were in Madison, Wisconsin. And so we started driving to Chicago to visit the Mobids, Mr. and Mrs. Mobid, and to spend time with them and a little bit of time with their community. And so it was this gradual process of learning more about the faith and reading and asking questions. And in some ways, it was very, very basic because it was new. It was especially new for me. And in the midst of listening to these beautiful recordings being recited by remarkable priests, and just I can still remember the first time turning on a tape recorder. Yes, it was a tape recorder, not even a CD. I can remember just hearing, the Hashem Vohu, the Atahu Veriyu, all of the Tenderosti, and it was just like these songs taking you back, thousands of years, just like resonating throughout time. It was just absolutely beautiful. And the imagery and the discussions of fire and the importance of fire and the faith and the purity and the truth and the light that it represents. But what really stood out for me as a young professor, as someone who always believed in the scientific method, as someone who was always curious in my life, what really stood out for me were the terms Asha, Vohuman, and Ushta. These really resonated with me. There is a truth out there, and we can find it with our good mind, with hard work of our good mind. And from that work, we can find a kind of happiness of the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of the good mind. And that resonated with me not only intellectually, it resonated with me just as a person who I have an optimistic view of life. I tend to see, things are happening, but I tend to try to look for how we can pivot and what we can change. I would say I have sometimes people think it's overly optimistic, but I have an optimistic approach to life. And these concepts really resonated with me and really struck me as something that I could embrace and that could be part of my faith going forward. So that was really the early parts of my personal journey. It was very personal. It was very about, like, I could identify with it. I could see that in my own life. I could practice that kind of thing, and it made really good sense to me. But then there was another step in my personal journey. We moved to Washington, D.C. We literally just showed up. Mr. Khosrow Mobid introduced us to Timsar Shahriari, and he invited us to a gathering and then introduced us to a lot of people. And they said, well, why don't you come to Avesta Class? And okay, we were off and running. I just have to say it was remarkable. No questions. It was like, who are they? Why are they here? I don't know. They're not like they weren't born Zoroastrian. What's going on? They just showed up here. Maybe some of that was happening in the background, but no one was practicing that, at least not in front of us. People were welcoming us and inviting us in. And it was quite wonderful. And so this was maybe a few months after we had been in Washington, D.C., and I was asked to join this conversation, a fundraising conversation. I think, in fact, it was probably held at maybe Shaheen Cameron's parents' home, I think. And so we were part of this conversation about fundraising, and at the time we were trying to build a Dari Mare at the time. And Shaheen gave me a ride home. And so that's why I have this image of the car. And I remember being in the car with Shaheen. I was a little bit nervous because I didn't really know everybody that well, and I wasn't sure how I fit in. And I was excited to be there, but I was feeling a little bit like, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm jumping in too soon, and maybe I should cool my jets a little bit, or, wasn't sure how to fit in yet, how to belong yet in this community. And we're driving down 270, and Shaheen is trying to make me feel really welcome, just so wonderful and so thoughtful. And then she pauses and she says, I always remember and think that when Zarathustra first began teaching, no one was Zoroastrian. Everyone had to choose. And, that comment just resonated with me. First of all, it just made me feel like, yes, that's right. But secondly, it was her way of making me feel at home and making me feel that I belonged there, because she believed that. And so that was a real milestone moment for me to have such a distinguished and important member of the community. Shaheen's parents built our Dari Mare now. So, the Cameron family has a very special place in the heart of our community. But for Shaheen to say that was, just really a milestone for me. It was the first time I started thinking, okay, not only is this my identity, but I can start to feel that I belong here, and that that's acceptable. So that sense of being part of the community, continued. I did a number of things that were mentioned in the intro. I eventually started teaching. Farzad Adoun and I co-taught a class, and we had so much fun, and we followed those students through. We kind of continued with a group of students. And at one point I was working with Rubina Patel as a coordinator, and we did concerts, big interfaith concerts and different things. And it was a lot of fun. And so my sense of being part of that community and belonging continued to grow. I continued to find that I feel that I had a place in all of that. But in February of 2020, I had the privilege of taking a red-eye flight to California. I had literally 24 hours to do this. And I wanted to write an article about Mr. Dayush Irani for Fazana, because I had seen him at a recent Fazana AGM meeting, and had talked with him a little bit and learned a little bit about who he was, and was really curious, wanted to learn more. And so I took a red-eye flight to California, and I had the chance to spend the day with Mr. Dayush Irani and his very dear friend, Dr. Ali Jafari. And in this picture, we took this in the Zarathustrian Assembly that day. Dr. Jafari is 99 years old in this picture. And he and Mr. Dayush Irani, of course, did a lot of wonderful things together, supporting each other in the work of Dr. Jafari. But for me, it was this day of, especially Dr. Jafari is like an icon in my thinking. I had heard of him. We have wonderful community members who knew him and had shared information with me about him, and had read a lot of his work. So meeting him was just like, just phenomenal. And they just invited me, like we went along, and we got in this van and we drove along. We went to an Armenian Iranian bakery, where he gave me the history of all the different sweets. And, we spent time at the Zarathustrian Assembly, spent time talking with both of them about their friendship and their time together. But, the statement that kind of stood out for me that day, and the kind of message for me that day, was, again, a Zoroastrian who has chosen of his own free will, right? That this is not only about your identity, it's not only about belonging to a community and feeling accepted by a community, but it's also the empowerment of the choice that you've made and who you are. You know, I don't want to say you don't need a community. We all need a community, but there's a strength in it as well. It's not just an identity, but it's an empowerment. The power of that choice. You know, when we tie our kushti and we say the word of to choose, right? I think this was a real milestone moment for me, and stood out for me. It still stands out for me as a part of my evolution in who I am and how I identify with the Zoroastrian community. And all of this has happened as part of a community journey as well. You know, I mentioned that we showed up and our community in Washington, D.C. was very welcoming. We have, you know, individuals who were the founders of our community back in 1979, you know, who were very progressive in their thinking, who were very open-minded, who almost anticipated the day that someone like me would show up who was not born Zoroastrian, but how they would welcome me to the community. And so we have that beginning in our constitution and in our community. And we are a community where a large number of families who came from India, Parsi families who are there together, and a large number of families who have come from Iran are together, and families who have come from Pakistan. And you know, a lot of people like myself who chose the faith or who married into the faith. And so I put this picture up here. This is from one of our Cameron seminars, but you know, I'm just really proud of this community, you know, for who they are, for their open-mindedness, and that we all, you know, are together doing a lot of things, our celebrations, everything together. And I think the thing that really was a turning point for me in terms of our community was when we built our prayer room. I was president at the time, and we had a space in our Dari Mer for the prayer room, but we hadn't activated it as a prayer room. And so we started a process of town halls and thinking sessions. We worked with an architect named Scott Knutson, and this picture of the prayer room is one of Scott's pictures from his new design imagery. In fact, the prayer room, Scott won an architectural award recently in the National Capital Region for his work on our prayer room. But that process was one of, you know, let's hear the experience. You know, to talk about building a prayer room is one thing, but to build a prayer room for a community that had such varied experiences in the spirituality and in the practice of the faith was really challenging. You know, some people had very strong feelings about it must be this way. It's always been done that way. You have to have these elements. This is what it has to look like. Others like, you know, I think we did something like this, and I think we did something like that, but I'm not really sure. It's been a long time. Some of us, you know, had been at the Dari Mer without a prayer room and didn't really have a strong preference one way or the other. So what we tried to capture in our prayer room was strong elements of our Parsi tradition and our Indian tradition, and elements that were really essential to have there, as well as elements of our Iranian tradition that we would have there. You can see the marble around the Afraganu there. All of that marble, the steps up to the Afraganu, all of the marble around that, it's all hand-cut marble, all symmetric. It was actually my brother who did that work for us, and his son. He's not Zoroastrian, but he was fascinated to do this work, and he built into it water lilies that are representative of the water lilies that are portrayed in Persepolis and imagery of Dariush as well. So we tried to capture the idea of, you know, some of the Achaemenian tradition. There's another picture which I didn't share, but from one of the fire temples in Iran, there's a sunburst at the top of it where the smoke would exit from several thousand years ago. And my brother and his son recreated that image in tile and put it over our basin. So I think it was Karhui was the place, the fire temple. So we tried to be really respectful. There's a Persian carpet on the floor, but there's a beautiful water basin. There's a place to tie your koshti. There's a beautiful carpet on the wall that is very much in the Parsi tradition. And so we tried to capture elements of all, and then we tried to capture modern elements, modern America. You know, there's a kind of contemporary feel to the prayer room as well. And we're learning how to use it. You know, the Avesta Class students use it. We come together there. We have our wonderful longtime priest, Brigadier Irvad Behram Pentaki, and we have our wonderful young Mobidiar, Hormozd Katki as well. And together we're figuring out how we engage and activate this prayer room in a way that represents our modern community, our combined and modern community, and how we pray together there and what we do together. So I share that journey because I think that there's, in trying to find ways to be together, to build together, to continue to celebrate and have a spiritual life together, I think that there's an element of learning and growth in our community that I feel is really important in how we move forward. So I'll wrap up my talk by focusing on this last idea of a journey for the community of faith. And, you know, I started out by talking about resilience and, you know, talk about a resilient culture and a resilient community. Zoroastrian communities across the globe and across the eons have survived, have been resilient, have preserved what we care about, have been heroic, have been, continued to rise. And I think a lot of it has to do with our commitment to Asha, Buhuman, and Ushta. And I think that, you know, the ideas that draw us, they're not just ideas, right? I think our challenge to continue that vibrancy, to continue to emerge, to continue to hold on to what is dear to us, but to continue to learn and prosper, is found in the practice of those ideas. And, you know, I think there's the term diversity these days is a hot button term, but I believe that diverse ideas, diverse experiences, and diverse knowledges are essential. And that's at the heart of Vohuman, right? Is that we're constantly asking questions. We're looking for new information. We're challenging thoughts. We're doubting old ideas. We're open to new ideas. We're listening. We're thinking critically, right? That only happens with diverse ideas and experiences. Listening to a researcher whose ideas may not portray what we've always believed, but it's new knowledge, it's new insight. Let's look at it, let's discuss it, let's think about it. Let's look at other researchers as well. You know, let's be exposed to new ideas, let's discuss, let's engage. And, you know, beyond the ideas, beyond the conversations, I wanted to mention as well, one of the other really cool elements of our community is the Gatha Study Circle that Jamshid Ghoshtasbi has led for many years. And many members of our community are part of that conversation. You know, another place where ideas are discussed, where it's a learning environment, it's a place of, thinking forward. But beyond the ideas, right, how do we practice these things? And I think that's our challenge today is, we've built our communities. We're all across North America. We're all across the world. We have our practices. How do we take these ideas into modern North America? How do we practice Asha, the good mind, good thoughts, good words, good deeds? How do we practice these powerful ideas in ways that are desperately needed in today's world? I did a special with Nawaz Merchant, who's a brilliant author and editor. Nawaz and I co-edited a Fazana issue right before the pandemic, focusing on the young people in our community. And I also am on the committee in ZAMWI for the Mobajina Impact Fellows Scholarship, where we look at all of these amazing things that young people are doing and they're proposing to do, not just earning good grades and these things, but rolling up their sleeves and tackling challenges in the world in ways that are transformational and making an impact. And it's those kinds of practices as we engage in our communities, as we become part of our, not just our Zoroastrian community, but our broader community, where we're based, where we're living, our geography. You know, how do we start to take the practice of the search for Asha, building our good minds, and the quest for some ultimate happiness? How do we take that out into the world in a way that we are practicing this so that we're expanding our culture, enriching our culture, and taking these ideas into the world in a powerful and big way? What stays the same in that process and what evolves? Those are all questions, but those are the questions I'll leave you with here, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Anne, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. And what a journey. Amazing story. Thank you so much. And so, friends, if you like to raise your hand for questions or comments with Anne, please keep it short. There's 55 of us here. You can also type in your questions or comments into the chat room, and then we can present them to Anne, and we can go over them. So anybody, I'm looking. And then also, and if looking at your resume and your professional career, it's fascinating, as I said earlier, how Zoroastrian it has been. And when you get to answering some of those questions that are coming in and some of the comments, I would like to hear some of those connections between Zoroastrianism and, like, for instance, your help with. It sounds like also you've helped many underprivileged people with their educations and needs. So maybe you can cover some of that too.
Sure.
Okay. So, I don't know if I'm seeing, okay, I see one hand. Behram John, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Anne, for that beautiful journey you shared with us. I just want to comment on the last comment made by the moderator of helping people who are underprivileged, who are poor. And I was reminded of the journey we took to help the people in Pakistan at the time of an earthquake. And it was Anne and Zari's home basement, which became the center point for the whole community to bring blankets and clothes together and then get them shipped on a truck, which Anne had somehow maneuvered to bring it to Chicago and then fly those over to Pakistan. I mean, what more do you want from a Zoroastrian? That is the essence of the third part of the Yatharva. And it was a wonderful journey to collaborate with the family. So thank you, Anne, for being part of our community.
Behram, thank you for reminding me of the coat drive. That was probably 2005, maybe. I think we had been here for about a year and a half or two. And Behram said, you know, when Behram says, I have an idea, it's like, oh boy, here we go. Like there's work involved, but it's going to be good. It's going to be great. And Behram said, Capital One, all of the people who work for Capital One Bank, they have certain number of hours that they can give to volunteerism, but when they reach those hours, they have to kind of stop. And so they were working on this big coat drive in the National Capital Region, and they had a whole huge room full of coats and clothes and things that they didn't have the time to distribute. And so Behram had asked them if we could take them, but then we had to figure out how to get that whole room of coats someplace to sort them so that we could get them to Pakistan after the earthquake. And so I don't know how many car rides it was, Behram, but it must have been, 15, 20 loads back and forth in multiple cars to get all of those coats back to our basement. But that was sure a lot of fun. And really felt really good to know that they got into the hands of the people in Pakistan who needed them.
Awesome. There is also a documentary called BAM 6.2. It's the story of a Jewish American couple visiting a Zoroastrian site in Iran called BAM when it was hit by a very strong earthquake, 6.2, of course, and how they had priority in hospitalization, care, and everything else. And they came back and said, "We are not only Americans, we are Jewish, and we came first when we were in Iran and when that disaster happened." Great story. Um, Anybody? I don't see any other hands, but since
Max has his hand up, and Ruxana.
okay,
And Behram as well.
Bahram, you can. I think you need
The
to
old one.
bring it down. Okay, Roxana, please go right ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure why it shows up under my daughter's name, but this is Nazneen Surkari. uh, I think there was one thing she said which was very, very beautiful about trying to have Asha and your good thoughts, good words, good deeds. How does it apply to our lives today? And unfortunately, I had tried this with my Sunday school kids, and it is such a disappointment that not one person thinks they can do a good thought, good word, good deed. So I'm glad that she mentioned that what I'm trying to do with my kids is so important to revive it amongst the younger generation, because without living it in their day-to-day lives, it doesn't mean anything.
I'm so glad that you're focused on that. I think we all are trying to, it's hard. Our children are bombarded with all kinds of things across social media and across, the news and YouTube and, all kinds of things that make it very hard for them to be optimistic or to find the goodness in them. But it's amazing what the power of, one good thing that they can do can have the ripple effects it can have. I know Farzad Edun and I spend a lot of time on these concepts with our students, and and sometimes it does feel a little bit distant for them, but it's there. Keep trying, and it's so important.
You just actually strengthened my resolve to send out an email that I had been playing around with. How would it be received? But I think your talk makes it very essential for me to send it out, not just to the students, but their parents too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roxana. Thank you, Anne. Max, please go right ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Hey, Miss Anne, I think everybody agrees that your story was incredibly touching, and I actually resonate with that because I'm actually Persian Iranian, but unfortunately, when Islam, the third script of the three Abrahamics, was created to destroy Zoroastrian, I've been forced to, at birth, be identified as Islamic, and now I'm here in the States, and I'm only allowed to be friend of Zoroastrian in this community, which is kind of insulting, given that I'm 100% Persian. And so, and my question, I guess, is, I read before that Zoroastrianism at one point was actually the largest religion on earth. And my question actually is, I have this idea of like trying to make that happen again. And I really love this American Zoroastrian Society. I didn't even know what it was about until I logged in. You guys started explaining it, and I'm fascinated by it. My curiosity is, how come it's American Zoroastrian Society and not like, the Universal Zoroastrian Society or something more global, so I can, contact friends around the world and have them join without them, questioning why is it American? I mean, I am American. I'm Persian American. I have nothing wrong with that. But my question is, in order for us to get it back to where it once used to be as the world's largest religion, which is the best religion of all, which is not idolization based like the three Abrahamics that will have the same script writer, and it's all divine wisdom, our Mazda, which is our pineal gland, the divine blessed us with, the source blessed us with, is, and our purpose is to activate our pineal gland and find consciousness and tap into our purpose and our special gifts that the divine has blessed each of us with. So I'm just curious, is it too late to maybe edit the name, or what was the reasoning behind making it American Zoroastrian Society, not like, global, universally or something like that, more expanded version? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Max. And this question, you're welcome to answer
No, no, please.
question, but it's if the question is more about the name of the American Zoroastrian Society, Navid or Artemis, if you guys would like to also answer the question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's a great question, Max. I can, Artemis, John, did you want to say something?
No, I'd love for you to answer it. Thank you, Navi.
Yeah. Yeah, Max, I think it's a great question. I think we wanted to emphasize upfront that we are looking at building a worldwide community. But I think we did want to focus initially with starting this organization with some finite space. And we're all based in America, North American continent. And I think there's a couple of things we thought about. One is that we wanted to embody specific values and ideals, and we mentioned those, and make this open and inclusive. Second is that we are lacking an English first kind of focused community in general. And I think that's one way we wanted to start with and ground ourselves so that there was some original base. I think it's absolutely within our mission to expand over time to other areas. And I think like we discussed a little bit earlier, we're thinking about this as a virtual community that is able to facilitate and help with other organizations elsewhere. So I think the idea would be for us to help grow. If there was, let's say, a European group or a group in Asia they want to operate, I think they're probably best served, more localized to that area. But we wanted to start here where we are now. But you're absolutely right. The mission is completely aligned with my community.
Thank you so much, Navi, John. Max, I'm also myself a Zoroastrian by choice. And you and I'm also Persian, so you and I have more or less the same background. And, I've been involved since I was 16, 17 years old. I discovered it in a classroom in a European school. And I said, oh my God, this is my ancestors. And the rest is history. But one thing I learned is that we have to take, as Anne said in the beginning of her talk, is how cultures evolve and how things go on. The thing with Zoroastrianism is that we don't go knock on doors. So everybody, we like Anne, should set her story with Zarir. They discovered it. They wanted it. The community welcomed them. They contributed to the community and to the cause. And that's how it goes. That's the story of me, you, and many other with the same background. And I think it's a great thing. Thank you for the great question, though. Let's go to Iriana. You had
Irina,
your hand
yes.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much. And your talk really resonated with me because I have been interested in Zoroastrian religion for some time now, and I've recently moved to New York, and I'm looking for ways to connect to the community. And so far, I have not been able to succeed. I'm curious, what would be your suggestions? How do you get in? I mean, how do you become a Zoroastrian by choice? How do you connect to the community and find learning resources and ways to become a part of it?
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear of your curiosity and your interest, Irina. That's beautiful. I mean, it took us really, it was 10 years of Zarir and I reading and kind of looking for community and looking for connections. I was raised in a Christian family, in a Lutheran church. What was important for me was that community and the heart of faith and a sense of, a shared belief. It was so important for me. And so it wasn't easy for me to think about, embracing another faith but Zoroastrianism for me it was all inclusive in so many ways, right? Because it starts with the individual and your own quest for knowledge and learning. And so it was a long journey for us. It wasn't overnight. It was long and it was transformational. But we had the good fortune of, maybe we were just a little, I don't know, naive or something, but we literally just showed up. we showed up. We had someone who introduced us, who was a highly respected member of the community, Mr. Timsar Shahriari, and we were introduced by a gentleman from Chicago, Mr. Kehosro Mobed, who was an established person of that community. So having that introduction was probably helpful. But, you know, we were introduced, we were welcome to come to Avesta Class, and then we just rolled up our sleeves and started finding ways we could contribute. You know, my daughter started going to Avesta Class. You know, we started to attend the different events and activities. We started volunteering wherever we could. We started to, you know, participate in different ways and help organize different things. So partly it was a long journey of thought and reflection, and then at one point it was just kind of jumping in and just being present and, you know, doing what we could to be part of the community. It also helped to have a wonderful, welcoming community here in Washington, D.C. I will say that was not suspicious or you know, anxious about us being there, but it's like, hey, like, sure, come on in. Happy to have you here. So the community matters a lot, Irina, but I wish you all the best. I think be persistent, you know, be persistent, but remember that it's your identity. Belonging is one thing, but the power and the identity of your belief and how you live your life is the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Anne. Great answer. I see one of my mentors here that I was just going to challenge him that he's too quiet, but I see his finger is up, so thank God he is willing to say something. Dr. Kersi Mubet Antia. You're please unmute. You're muted. You're still muted, Kersi.
Sometimes if you just hit the space bar, it will unmute.
Maybe while we're
Oh,
waiting.
you got it. You got
You
it.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I was going to say that I really welcome what Ann Kardashian is saying. It reminds me of many others who saw